Hiya everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Secrets in Dragon Ball Games. Tenkaichi 3 doesn't allow you to select the same character twice, and that makes sense. There are over 150 characters in the game. Why would you even want to play with two of the same? Although, there are a few exceptions to this rule. Let's see what happens if we attempt to select multiple Cybermen. Yup, you can fill your entire 5-man squad with Cybermen. If you're wondering why Cybermen are the only exception, well, it might have something to do with them being literal plant people. They can literally be cultivated and grown. But more so, it's probably because they're considered as clone-type characters. The Z Fighters were fighting 6 of them in the show, so I believe that this was just a clever little nod to the series. But Cybermen aren't the only clone-type characters. You can also select 5 Cell Juniors and even 5 Metal Coolers. Fun fact, Metal Cooler plays exactly like an android, despite not being one. You can't drain his energy, you can't sense him, he can't even charge his ki. After all, he is a mass-produced robot clone of Cooler. So yeah, these 3 are the only characters that can be selected more than once, which is quite fitting, considering all of them appeared as an army of clones in the show. In Tenkaichi 1, we can play in the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, a vast, endless void where you can get a year's worth of training in a single day in real time. On its own, the Time Chamber stage is no big deal. Every single game has it as a playable stage. The neat part comes when we slow down with our gameplay and just listen. From the creators of Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail is a free-to-play cross-platform space fantasy RPG available on your mobile devices, PC, PS4, and PS5. Explore different worlds across the universe and immerse yourself in an adventure filled with impeccable animation, cinematics, and music. Now, the combat in this game is awesome, especially the ultimate techniques. You got giant orbital cannons, a full-fledged army, and even guns. Speaking of guns, Kafka is a new, katana-slashing, gun-wielding 5-star limited character and one of the game's most anticipated characters. In fact, she's the one who created you as the protagonist of the game. She is a ruthless killer, yet she always looks composed, with a smile that never fades from her face. Blade is also a new 5-star limited character. He is a formidable swordsman who can be either your enemy or your ally. Normally, Blade is silent. However, sometimes he switches his personality all of a sudden and... anger and aggression. Blade is a wind-type damage dealer who uses his sword to attack enemies and sacrifices his own HP to deal AoE damage. Version 1.2 is around the corner. The main storyline of the Shensho Luofu reaches its climax. Experience a carefully crafted climax featuring an epic story, animation, music, and 2 new maps. There will also be some interesting limited time events, monsters, and most importantly, free rewards. So, what are you waiting for? Download the game now using my special link in the description and experience these new characters. Also, don't forget to use this code to get 50 Stellar Jade for free in-game. I'm gonna throw a few key blasts. Let's see if you can catch it. And now I'm going to do the same thing on a different stage. Notice the difference? The Hyperbolic Time Chamber has a subtle reverb, echo-like effect that can be heard each time you make a sound on this stage. A simple yet clever little detail by the developer team. The same thing happened when the Z Fighters entered the Time Chamber in the anime.
It's hot in here. I feel kind of funny.
I've seen some people in the comments claiming that Future Gohan loses his arm once battle damaged. Now, I know he only uses one of his arms during combat and also has a limp arm for his low HP animation, but having his arm straight up fall off during battle? That's not something I ever encountered during any of my regular playthroughs. A bunch of people were saying he loses his arm in the Japanese version of BT3, aka Sparking Meteor, and some were saying you need the 1.0 North American version. With so many people claiming this, surely there's some merit to it. I've managed to obtain every single version of Tenkaichi 3, and we're going to do this test on each of them, kicking it off with the Japanese version. Nothing, arm is still intact, and then moved on to the European version. Again, nothing. And finally, the North American version. Yep, I thought so. There you have it. Future Gohan doesn't lose his arm in any of the game's versions. But people still keep on insisting that they've seen Future Gohan with one arm in Tenkaichi 3. Worst part is, I also have a faint memory of playing with one-armed Future Gohan as a kid. Could this be some strange case of the Mandela effect? Surely, there has to be something there, with so many people remembering the same thing. Well, I think I've got a possible explanation, but it might not apply to everyone. You see, Tenkaichi 3 is one of the most downloaded PS2 ROMs of all time. If you go to any ROM site, chances are you're going to see Tenkaichi 3 at the top. With a game as beloved and popular as Tenkaichi 3, you already know there will be tons of mods and fan projects centered around the game. One of those projects is the famous Tenkaichi 4 mod. It's a fantastic mod, which I'll probably cover in future videos. But for now, here's what's important. The creators of the mod have altered some of the features from the base game, and one of those features is, you guessed it, Future Gohan's battle damage look. And it's not just Tenkaichi 4 mod. Almost all of these modded versions of Tenkaichi 3 love to give Future Gohan his iconic look back. It's possible some of you have played a modded version of Tenkaichi 3 without even knowing it. Hence, so many people having a memory of one-armed Gohan. That's my theory at least. No official version of BT3 has one-armed Gohan. Only game that came out during that period that had him was Saga's. It's possible people misremembered it with the DBZ Saga's version of him. Here's a subtle little detail that's been silently removed from the Tenkaichi series. The auras in the Tenkaichi games have gone through quite an evolution. From the pretty standard aura charges in the very first Tenkaichi game to a heavy focus in electricity and lightning effects in the second game. And back to that Tenkaichi 1 aesthetic in the third game, albeit slightly more refined. But there's something unique about the Tenkaichi 1 aura charge, which I don't believe many people picked up on. If you're standing on a solid surface while gathering ki, something interesting happens. Small rocks will start to fly around the player, just as they do in the show. I really love this little detail, and I'll never understand why they got rid of it in all of the future installments. Budokai 3 is my favorite when it comes to this tiny detail. See, in Budokai 3, if you are charging on a solid surface, rocks will start to fly around you, just like they do in Tenkaichi 1. However, if you are charging on a surface where there's grass, alongside rocks and soil flying around you, you'll also be able to notice pieces of grass slowly getting lifted into the air. This one is probably the most subtle but genius detail I've ever seen. Budokai 3 was the first Budokai game to add Kid Goku as a playable character. They even had plans for a whole time travel themed Dragon Universe campaign.
Listen, you seem to have gone to the future in a time machine.
Oh, a time machine. Like one of those thingies you wear on your wrist, right?
But that's a whole different story that'll be covered in one of the future videos. Anyways, there are plenty of characters that use the Kamehameha in this game. Goku, Gohan, Goten, Yamcha, and so on. And all of those characters fire it in a certain shape. Kamehameha! Whereas with Kid Goku, things are a bit more unique.
Kamehameha!
Did you catch it? Kid Goku's Kamehameha has a soft, rounder shape, and the blast itself looks smaller than the regular version. It's a cute little nod to the original Dragon Ball. The Kamehamehas were drawn with much softer and rounder shapes. In fact, the whole art style of the original series was more round and soft compared to the sharp and rigid Z era of the series. Let's talk about jumping mechanic in Tenkaichi 3. I know it sounds kinda dumb, but bear with me. I always knew Grade 3 Trunks was slower and more sluggish than his regular Super Saiyan form, but I never realized his ability to jump also saw a big nerf. I guess those big muscles really take a toll on you. This little detail makes sense, but what doesn't make sense? Super Saiyan 2 Goku. For some reason, he jumps higher than the rest of the cast. At first, I thought this was a power progression thing, like the higher your power level is, the higher you could jump. However, that isn't the case. Although SSJ2 Goku jumps higher than SSJ1, as soon as we transform to Super Saiyan 3, that height increase is gone and reverted back to Super Saiyan 1 level of height. And what's more, General Blue has the highest jump in the entire game. Why does he have the highest jump in the entire game? I have no idea. Could just be a reference which I'm not picking up on. In Budokai 3, if you have the Warp Kamehameha capsule equipped and successfully completed the Dragon Rush sequence, Goku will knock the enemy away and begin charging his Kamehameha, at which point the enemy will launch a Ki Blast in an attempt to stop Goku from charging. But Goku just ignores it and teleports behind. That's how it looks like with 95% of the characters. Goku charges a Kamehameha, the enemy launches a Ki Blast, Goku teleports, and blows them up. But what if a character isn't able to launch a Ki Blast at Goku? What if that character is Mr. Satan? Mr. Satan isn't able to use Ki. Heck, he can't even fly or launch Ki Blasts. So let's see what happens if we try to warp Kamehameha on Mr. Satan. Instead of breaking the lore and giving him the ability to use Ki Blasts, the devs decided to take their time and do something different. Mr. Satan will just stand there proudly while doing a pose in his typical champ fashion, accepting his fate.
I'm not really.
There's also Videl, who, similar to Mr. Satan, isn't able to launch Ki Blasts. Instead of striking a pose, she would put her guard up and accept her fate with a worried look on her face. In Tenkaichi 3, if you perform Solar Flare, your opponent will get blinded and just fly off into the distance. After the flash wears out, they'll begin to scout the area and look for you. Well, it didn't always work like this. Things were a bit different in both Tenkaichi 1 and 2. In those games, once you blinded your opponent, they would begin to frantically punch and kick in an attempt to stop you from escaping. And in most cases, they actually stop you. I always felt like characters should have done this in the show. I know you're blind, Trunks, but you could have at least thrown a few Ki Blasts in Cell's direction. At least Krillin and Android 18 were smart enough to try this. Also, can we talk about how bad Solar Flare is in Tenkaichi 2? The activation takes way too long, and the window of opportunity for your opponent to punch you and negate the Solar Flare is huge. I'm really glad they went back and made it an instant activation move in Tenkaichi 3.
Where are you?
If you don't do anything on the ultimate training screen for 2 minutes, Great Saiyaman will do this.
I'll have to do great today too.
That's all for this one. A big shout out to Honkai Star Rail for sponsoring this video. Also, that Naruto video which I promise will be out real soon. In the meantime, let me know which DBZ games you want to see next. As always, thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.